right, well, welcome, Jay. It's a pleasure to have you today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely, thank you.
Tell me, when you were growing up, what was it that you dreamed of being when you were going to grow up? What were you going to do?
You know, I think like many Indian children here, immigrants, it was foisted upon me to be a doctor. And so I followed that pathway in college and decided that's not my cup of tea. My brother was a doctor and I saw his sort of lifestyle and the challenges he was going through. So I said, hey, let me try something different. And so I found myself in New York working at a big firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I met my wife.
Aww.
And we traveled. We took some time off, a couple of years to travel, and then came back, went to the Bay Area, and found myself in technology, working at a startup. And really, you know, like many experiences people have in startups, it was sort of transformational for me, and just to learn so much about managing a P&L and marketing and sales and just, you know, the things you don't learn in school and the things you don't learn in a big corporate environment. Yeah. So took all that and somehow found myself in the public sector. And part of it was actually, hey, I wanted to create something on the side, and working at a startup, as we know, can be all-consuming. And so for me, it was really, hey, how can I do both? How can I subsidize the work that I'm doing and have a day job? And so went into the public sector, and I really found it really interesting and something I can make impact in, and it really resonated with me. So that was something I really have stuck with since then.
Wow. Wow, and that's probably a great entree into sort of talking a little bit about this Office of Civic Innovation that you're heading up as Chief Innovation Officer. What is it, and what do you do there? What's your mission?
Yeah, so we're sort of new, relatively new. The mayor created the role of a Chief Innovation Officer when he first got elected into office 2012, so we're about 4 years in. And we decided to really be a bridge with the broader community, with the entrepreneurial community and the innovation community here in San Francisco and more broadly, thinking about how do we bring in those new ideas and methodologies that are sort of making impact in so many other areas. How do we bring those tools and resources into government? And so a lot of our thinking is about collaboration and partnerships. And we're a small team, so we like to think of ourselves as a startup within government. Yeah. And so we try to bootstrap ideas, we try to bring in entrepreneurs into our office through our fellowship program. And you know, we're not shy of tackling big problems, and it's because we have such great talent in the Bay Area and in our backyard. So we can say, hey, Google, let's think about transportation, let's think about public health. And they're residents, they're people who care about San Francisco, so they want to work with us and think about what tools do they have and sort of just leveraging their brain power and helping us solve these problems. So it's really exciting to think about just the number of partnerships that we've created and the conversations that we've had in 4 years.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell me a little bit more about the fellowship program. What is that?
Yeah.
How do people get involved? Do you take everyone?
Yeah, no, it's not the cup of tea for everybody. I mean, it's something we want to create a pathway for people who are from other sectors who are interested in making impact locally, and it's a way for them to experiment. Hey, is public sector the right fit for me? And for us, it's a way to bring in great talent. And how do we actually help our leadership bring in great talent from the private sector and other sectors? So this year we're focused on digital fellows, so bringing in people from sort of the startup world to build digital products. And when you think about government and where we are in technology, clearly we need some support and help there. We're stuck in paper, there's a lot of red tape, and so we think technology can have a huge impact in streamlining and really meeting the expectations that people have when you're banking, when you're in other sort of interactions in your private life, and then you go into the public sector. It's a huge, huge delta. And so we want to really raise the bar about how we interact with our constituents and really make digital the default for how we interact.
That's great. That's great. So, I mean, obviously, you've touched on this already a little bit, but you are the first Chief Innovation Officer for the city of San Francisco. It obviously looked upon in many ways as a beacon for other cities to kind of get to understand or have a roadmap of what might be potential for working with startups. Why do you think that the time is right for you guys to kind of double down on these initiatives and efforts now? Why take so much of a focused approach to really making sure you're talking with this type of community on a daily basis?
Well, I think it goes back to the work that startups have done in so many other industries and the impact that they've made and the transformations that they've achieved. And for us, we haven't seen the same ecosystem built around the public sector. And so we challenge ourselves to say, how do we actually catalyze this ecosystem? We have, an iconic brand, San Francisco, and we have so much talent here in the Bay Area. And so how do we start convincing entrepreneurs that, they should really consider us? And so we've worked on a program called Startup in Residence to lower the barriers of entry and to tackle some of the issues that we think entrepreneurs face when they look at the public sector. So it's for us, it's really about, it's our theory of change. Startups have created so much impact. How do we embed them in government to see the same impact?
Like us, you really are big proponents of education and supporting entrepreneurs. I know that's a cornerstone of the Startup in Residence program. What kinds of trainings or programs are you working on building for the entrepreneurs that are going to be part of this program?
I mean, that's one of the challenges that we see that entrepreneurs face, that there's a lot of information and knowledge about how do you create a startup, whether it's financing, marketing, sort of Startup 101, there's a number of accelerators, programs out there. But when you think about the public sector, really it's a mystery. Who do you work with? Who do you talk to? What is an RFP? What's open data? How do you address the security needs and challenges that we have in government? So there's a whole host of topics and conversations that really, the only way that you can get that is through experience today. And we really want to put this information out there, bringing in thought leaders, bringing in startups that have actually been able to be successful in the public sector, not only for inspiration, but what are their methodologies and their approaches to taking a sales cycle that can take months or years and bringing that down to days and weeks. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen successful startups do that. And so how do we share that knowledge? How do we build that? And how do we allow every entrepreneur to access that? Not just the companies working in our program, but everybody broadly that's thinking about the public sector, either in an adjacent market or is looking at targeting public sector directly. We really want to empower them through education. And we think that's a really powerful way to grow the ecosystem.
I bet a ton of entrepreneurs are watching this and they're going to say, am I going to be a right fit? I'm working on a big issue that's impacting our community. I fit in a challenge statement. What else are you looking for as sort of an ideal potential entrepreneur for this program right now?
It's a good question. I would encourage entrepreneurs to apply. It's only 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and something that we heard from last year about the program that we're improving for this year is making it easier for people to get into contracts with our city government. So for San Francisco, if you apply for one of the challenges that we've articulated, one of the 16 challenges, and you're selected, you have the ability after this 16-week program to get into a commercial arrangement without going through an RFP. And we've done that because the actual program itself is an RFP. It doesn't look like it, doesn't feel like it. For 30, 60 minutes, you can actually apply and get selected, where it could take months to develop a response to an RFP traditionally. So for us, that's another innovation that we're doing. Procurement's hard. We know that. It's complicated. Only the bigger companies can really help, can actually navigate through that process. So how do you level that playing field? And we think that we still want to be good stewards of public sector dollars, but we also want to let more startups into the ecosystem and to work with government. So I would say, it's a low barrier to entry to apply, so do that. And then the things we're looking for are things that I would say that VCs look for, sort of the quality of the team, do they have traction, but most importantly, do they have a product or do they have a vision or the capability to meet the need that we have? That's core.
One of our favorite things that we talk a lot about here is sort of separating fact from fiction or dispelling myths. Fun question for you. What was your favorite myth or what is the favorite myth that you hear time and time again with entrepreneurs thinking that they'd love to go into selling into the government sector, but they don't want to try because of X? What is the myth that you hear all too often that you're trying to dispel?
Yeah, I think the myth is that government is extremely hard to work with and can be challenging. And I think there's a kernel of truth there. So it's not a complete myth. But I think there's a number of cities in our partnership internationally. Amsterdam's replicated the program. I think there's cities like Philadelphia and New York that recognize, let's think about how we actually work with startups in a meaningful way. What does that look like? How do we change our culture so that it's not about IBM and sort of risk-averse sort of perspective? How do we actually embrace risk, recognizing that innovation and risk are tied together? And so I think for entrepreneurs, look for those cities that get how you work and how you think and recognize your value. And the good thing is that we're growing a movement. And so we started with San Francisco. We now have 4 cities, and we have Amsterdam and a dozen other cities that are looking to replicate this program. So we think we're part of a broader movement to really fundamentally change how government thinks about the relationship with startup. And it's a really exciting conversation to have. And you're seeing leaders from mayors and chiefs of staff recognize that, hey, we need to do things differently. We need to bring startups to our community as well.
Right.
We're blessed here in San Francisco with so many startups, but West Sacramento, think about a small community like West Sacramento. Well, they can leverage our iconic brand. We can attract a lot of startups, and it's maybe a better fit for a startup to be in West Sacramento. They can maybe experiment more in a smaller setting, and arguably they're faster than we are. We're a much bigger organization. We're a little bit slower when it comes to things. So we're excited about this sort of global movement that's happening.